There is a war happening right now that no one talks about, not on a battlefield, not on the streets, not in the news, but inside you, behind your eyes, between your ears. The war is silent, and the war is real. It's the battle in your mind. You don't get to choose whether you're in it. You're already there. But you do get to choose whether you win. Let me ask you something deeply personal. How many battles have you already lost this week? Not to others, but to yourself. How many mornings did you wake up and talk yourself out of chasing something you once claimed you wanted? How many moments did fear negotiate you into silence? How often did doubt plant seeds that you watered with your attention? There's a voice inside your head that no one else can hear. It speaks to you more than anyone else ever will. And for many of us, it's not a voice of encouragement. It's a voice of doubt, a voice of shame, a voice of fear pretending to be logic. And if you've been listening to that voice your entire life without questioning it, you've already lost battles you didn't even know you were fighting. Let me tell you something hard and beautiful at the same time. That voice is not always telling you the truth. In fact, more often than not, it's lying to you. I want you to think back to a moment when you had a deep desire to do something bold. Start something, say something, be something, and you suddenly felt the brakes slam inside your mind. That voice appeared, and it sounded calm, maybe even rational. You're not ready? What if you fail? You're not like them? You've tried this before, and it didn't work. Don't embarrass yourself. That voice, that wasn't truth. That was your nervous system, conditioned by past wounds and fears, trying to protect you by shrinking your life. It's the ancient part of your brain, your amygdala, acting like it's still in the wild, treating every challenge like a tiger crouched in the bushes. It doesn't distinguish between physical death and emotional risk. It just says, stay safe. But safe is not the same as alive. See, the brain's number one job is survival, not your greatness. And unless you train it, unless you rewire it, it will default to fear, to limitation, to caution. Not because you're weak, but because you're human. That voice inside you is just repeating the patterns you've rehearsed. It's a loop. It's software. The beautiful part, you can rewrite the code. I remember when I was in grad school, studying neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire itself based on repeated thought and behavior. I was stunned by how much of our inner dialogue is simply learned. That means it can be unlearned. That means the stories you tell yourself about who you are and what you can't do are optional. They feel real, but they're not laws, they're habits. Cognitive grooves that your neurons slip into over and over again. Let's get even more real. Imagine someone in your life, maybe a teacher, maybe a parent, maybe a friend, told you when you were young that you were not smart enough, or too sensitive, or not leadership material. And because our brains are highly plastic in youth, that comment didn't just sting, it formed a belief. That belief became a lens. And now, every time life offers you an opportunity to rise, the voice in your head doesn't whisper you're unworthy out of cruelty. It whispers it out of habit. But here's the breakthrough. You can stop listening. You can challenge it. You can respond instead of obeying. Just because you think something doesn't mean it's true. And just because a thought feels familiar doesn't mean it's accurate. The mind often confuses repetition with truth. Think about that again. Your mind confuses repetition with truth. So if you've spent years telling yourself, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, I'm never going to change, then your brain has started to accept that as reality. But it's a false reality. It's not truth. It's trauma echoing through thought. You win the battle in your mind the moment you begin to observe that voice rather than merge with it. This is the essence of mindfulness. Neuroscience shows that when you observe a thought, instead of reacting to it, your brain activity literally shifts. You activate your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for logic, regulation, and decision-making, and you deactivate the amygdala, the fight or flight center. In simple terms, the moment you step back and watch your inner voice, instead of obeying it, you take back control. You become the witness, not the prisoner. Now let's talk about courage. Not the kind that runs into burning buildings, but the quieter kind, the courage to talk back to your own mind. That's what it takes. Because you're not trying to silence the voice. You're trying to retrain it. You're trying to give it new evidence. That means showing up even when it says, don't bother. That means moving forward even when it says, you're going to fail. That means saying, I hear you, but I don't believe you anymore. And over time, if you keep acting from your values instead of your fears, that voice will start to shift. Slowly, softly. It'll start to say things like, This is hard, but you've done hard things before. You're scared, but that doesn't mean you're not ready. You don't have all the answers, but you can still take the next step. When that shift happens, when the voice that once paralyzed you becomes the voice that pushes you, that's when you know you've started winning the battle. But be warned, there will be setbacks. That old voice doesn't disappear overnight. It's wired into years of emotional memory. It will show up at your weakest moments. It will disguise itself as logic. It will pretend it's protecting you. Don't fight it with hate. Fight it with awareness. Fight it with action. I often tell people, don't trust your inner voice when you're tired, stressed, or in fear. That's not your real self talking. It's your wounded self. Instead, build a new inner voice through repetition, through rituals, through discipline. One of the most powerful tools, writing. Every morning, write down what your inner voice says, and then write a rebuttal. If your mind says, you're not qualified, write, I'm learning. I'm growing. And every expert was once a beginner. Turn your thoughts into dialogue, not decrees. Another tool, speak aloud. Literally talk back to your own thoughts. Say it out loud. That's not true. That's not me anymore. When you use your voice, you engage a different part of your brain. You create space between you and the thought. And above all, act in defiance of the voice. If it tells you not to go to the gym, go. If it says, don't ask the question, ask it. If it says, play small, stand up tall. Because every time you take action that contradicts your inner critic, you're rewiring your identity. That's neuroscience. That's real. That's how habits form and self-concepts change. So the next time you hear that voice saying you can't, or you're not enough, or you should stop, pause. Don't react. Don't run. Just breathe and say, I hear you. But I'm not here to survive. I'm here to win. And you win not by silencing the voice, but by standing taller than it. That's how the battle in your mind is won. One decision, one new thought, one brave step at a time. And remember, if that voice is lying to you, then maybe it's time you start telling yourself a better truth. A truth like, I'm not who was, I'm who I decide to become. And that, right there, that's the beginning of your freedom. There's a lie that we've all been told at some point in life. A subtle, dangerous lie that sits like a parasite in the back of your mind and slowly drains your potential. The lie is this: you have to feel confident to take action. You have to feel ready before you start. You have to believe in yourself before you move. Let me tell you, the truth, belief, is not a feeling. It's a decision. And that decision will define your life more than talent, more than opportunity, more than luck or privilege. Because if you're waiting to feel something before you act, you'll be waiting forever. Feelings are volatile. They change with the weather. One moment you feel like a warrior, the next you feel like a fraud. One morning you wake up full of energy. The next morning you can barely look in the mirror. You can't build a life of excellence on something as unstable as emotion. Belief must be deeper than that. It must be chosen, deliberately, repeatedly, especially on the days it feels absent. I remember speaking to a young man who wanted to become a leader in his field. He was intelligent, had a good heart, had a vision for his life. But he kept saying, I just don't believe I have what it takes. He said it like he was reporting the weather, like it was out of his control. And I told him, gently but firmly, you're waiting for belief to happen to you, but belief doesn't happen. It's built. You don't find belief, you forge it. That conversation changed his life. Because belief is like a muscle. If you train it, it grows. If you neglect it, it withers. And just like in the gym, training doesn't always feel good. It burns. It tests you. It demands that you show up even when you're tired. Especially when you're tired. There's a myth that belief feels like certainty. It doesn't. It often feels like risk. It feels like doing the thing anyway, despite the knot in your stomach. Despite the voice in your head that says, you're not enough. It feels like showing up to life with shaky hands, but a steady decision. The truth is, most of us are conditioned to believe in failure more than in ourselves. We've been trained to doubt. We've rehearsed stories of our limitations until they became our identity. Maybe someone told you that you were too slow, too emotional, too broken. Maybe life beat you down so many times, you stopped expecting anything better. And so the voice in your head became a mirror of your past rather than a window into your future. But here's the power you've forgotten you have. You can decide what you believe from this moment forward. Not based on the past, not based on your current circumstances, but based on who you are becoming. Think about that for a second. You can decide right now to start believing that you are capable, that you are enough, that your dreams are worth fighting for. And once you make that decision, your behavior will start to align with it. And when behavior aligns with belief, momentum begins. And momentum is what builds confidence. You don't wait for confidence to act. You act to earn confidence. This is where neuroscience becomes important. The brain doesn't know the difference between real confidence and practiced confidence. If you act like a person who believes in themselves, even if you feel like an imposter, your brain begins to map that identity. Every small, courageous act wires new connections. It's called neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reshape itself based on behavior and thought. Every time you show up, even with doubt in your chest, your brain starts to believe you're someone who shows up. That's how belief is formed. It's not about being fearless. It's about making decisions that fear doesn't get to vote on. You can feel afraid and still choose belief. You can feel inadequate and still decide to move forward. Belief is not the absence of doubt. It is the defiance of it. Every successful person you admire has made this decision. They didn't wait to feel like they were the right person for the job. They decided to become the right person. They made the hard choices, showed up consistently, failed publicly, and kept moving. They didn't wait to be validated. They validated themselves with relentless action. And that's what you must do. You don't need permission to believe in yourself. You don't need someone else to remind you of your potential. You already know it. You've just forgotten. You've buried it under years of fear, rejection, and perfectionism. But underneath it all, there's a voice in you that knows, a voice that whispers, you're meant for more. And the only way to let that voice lead is to make a conscious, repeated decision to believe it louder than the noise around you. Let me give you something practical, a tool. When you wake up tomorrow, before you reach for your phone, ask yourself one question. What would someone who believes in themselves do today? That's your roadmap. Then do that, even if you don't feel like that person yet. Act like the person you want to become, and your nervous system will catch up. Over time, belief will stop being something you need to fake. It will become who you are. And when that happens, your decisions will shift. Your posture will shift. The way you speak will shift. Because belief changes your entire physiology. It regulates your emotional state. It sharpens your focus. It raises your standards. But you can't get there without the first decision. Let me be real with you. It's going to be hard. You're going to have days where everything in you wants to crawl back to comfort. Days where the old identity feels safer than growth. Days where you feel alone in your path. And on those days, you must come back to the decision. Because belief is not a one-time choice. It's a daily one. It's brushing your teeth kind of daily. It's getting out of bed and putting your feet on the floor and reminding yourself, I'm still in this. I'm still choosing growth. I'm still deciding to believe. You don't have to get it perfect. You just have to keep choosing it. And over time, you'll look back at the version of you who doubted, who hesitated, and you'll realize how far you've come. Not because someone gave you permission, not because the world finally approved, but because you decided. That decision changed everything. So if you're standing at a crossroads right now, if you're staring at a dream that feels bigger than you, a mountain that seems too high, a version of yourself that feels out of reach, I want you to pause, take a deep breath, and tell yourself this. I don't have to feel ready. I just have to decide. And then move. Move with doubt in your chest. Move with fear in your hands. Move anyway, because the world doesn't need another person waiting to feel confident. The world needs you making bold decisions that build belief brick by brick. Discipline gets a bad name. It's often misunderstood, misrepresented, and misused. People think it means restriction. They think it means punishment. That it means forcing yourself to do things you hate, grinding until you collapse, suffocating your freedom in exchange for performance. But that's not what real discipline is. Not at all. Real discipline is love. It is the most honest, raw, and courageous form of self-respect you can practice. Because when you love someone, truly love them, you show up for them. You protect their growth. You invest in their future. You say no to their momentary impulses in service of their long-term well-being. That's what real discipline is. It's not about control. It's about care. And when it's directed inward, it becomes a life-changing act of devotion. Discipline is saying, I love myself enough to not give in to every fleeting emotion, every lazy thought, every toxic pattern that feels good in the moment but destroys me in the long run. That's not cruelty. That's love. When you wake up early to train your body, even when you want to sleep in, that's love in action. When you sit down to write, study, build, or create while your friends are out numbing their minds with distractions. That's love in action. When you choose silence over petty arguments, action over excuses, and growth over comfort, that's love in action. It's not glamorous, it's not loud, but it's powerful. I remember a time in my life when I had zero structure. I thought freedom meant doing whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted, no schedule, no commitments. I romanticized chaos and spontaneity, but what it actually created was anxiety, procrastination, and a deep inner emptiness. I wasn't free, I was lost. What saved me wasn't motivation. It wasn't some lightning bolt of inspiration. It was discipline. It was waking up at the same time every day, no matter how I felt. It was turning off my phone and facing the work I had been avoiding. It was building rituals and routines that rewired my mind and body to align with the man I wanted to become, not the one I was defaulting to. At first, it felt unnatural. My nervous system resisted the change. My mind negotiated constantly. Just one day off. You can skip this session. You're tired? You deserve a break? And the truth is, I was tired. I did want a break. But I also wanted freedom, and I had to learn that discipline is the path to freedom, not the enemy of it. Let that sink in. Discipline is not the enemy of freedom. It's the gateway. Most people want results without responsibility. They want strength without struggle, confidence without consistency. But it doesn't work that way. Every version of you that you dream of, healthy, sharp, creative, focused, resilient, that version is built through daily acts of discipline. Not once, not occasionally. Daily, discipline is what builds your identity, and identity shapes behavior. Here's the neuroscience behind it. When you repeatedly act in alignment with your goals, whether it's getting up early, meditating, writing, training, or choosing healthy food, you strengthen specific neural pathways in your brain. Your brain begins to associate your behavior with your identity. The more consistent the action, the stronger the association. In other words, when you act disciplined, you start to become disciplined. It becomes who you are, not just what you do. And that's the key. Discipline isn't something you have, it's someone you become. But let's not pretend it's easy. Discipline will cost you comfort. It will cost you popularity. It will cost you short-term pleasure, easy validation, and the seductive comfort of mediocrity. It will challenge every lazy instinct in your nervous system that says, why bother? But it will give you something far greater: pride, self-respect, strength, clarity, power. Let me ask you something personal. When was the last time you kept a promise to yourself that no one else knew about? That's where real confidence is born. Because when you keep promises that only you see, that only you benefit from, that only you will ever know, you begin to trust yourself. And trust is the foundation of belief. Not public wins, private victories. That's what discipline gives you: the inner peace of knowing you are the kind of person who does the right thing even when no one is watching. That's love. That's power. And when you approach discipline from this place, not as self-punishment, but as self-respect, it transforms everything. You stop resenting your routine. You stop avoiding the hard stuff. You stop negotiating with weakness. Because you understand this isn't about force. It's about freedom. Let me show you how deep this goes. Imagine a parent raising a child. A parent who lets the child eat whatever they want, stay up all night, skip school, ignore responsibilities. Is that love? Or is that neglect? Now imagine a parent who teaches the child to take care of their body, to show up for their responsibilities, to face discomfort with courage. That's love. That's discipline. So why do you think you can love yourself without disciplining yourself? You can't. Self-love without discipline is self-sabotage dressed in self-care. Because the truth is, real self-care isn't always relaxing. Sometimes it's exhausting. Sometimes it's brutal. Sometimes it's waking up early, turning off the phone, getting your hands dirty, breaking through emotional resistance, and doing the thing you promised yourself you would do. That's not just commitment. That's care. That's choosing your future self over your current feelings. And I promise you, there will come a day when the results of your discipline show up. You'll look in the mirror and feel a strength that wasn't there before. You'll speak with a confidence that doesn't need external validation. You'll move through life with clarity, purpose, and inner fire that others can feel. Not because you're better than anyone, but because you made a decision to stop abandoning yourself. Let me be brutally honest with you. Discipline doesn't always feel good. Some days it will feel like war. Some days it will feel like dragging yourself across the finish line alone in silence. But every step you take in discipline is a message to your nervous system: I am not my weakness. I am my decision. And that's the kind of identity that changes everything. So if you're struggling right now, if you're waiting for motivation, if you're stuck in the loop of inconsistency and self-doubt, let me offer you something deeper. Stop asking yourself how you feel and start asking yourself what you value. You value growth, then show up. You value strength, then choose the hard thing. You value freedom, then earn it through structure. You value peace, then create it through discipline. Because at the end of the day, the battle isn't between you and the world. It's between you and the part of you that would rather stay asleep. And the only weapon you have, the only tool powerful enough to pull you out of that place is discipline. It is not the punishment of your desires. It is the protection of your potential. So today, don't just talk about loving yourself. Prove it. Wake up early. Say no to distractions. Show up for your vision. Do the work. Do the work, especially when you don't feel like it. That's discipline. That's love in action. We live in a world that tells us to run from pain. Escape it. Numb it, medicate it, pretend it doesn't exist. And for most of us, that's what we've been taught from a young age. If it hurts, push it down. If it burns, distract yourself. If it breaks your heart, harden yourself. But here's the truth no one told you. Emotional pain is not your enemy. It's your doorway, your turning point, your path to power. Pain is not a punishment. Pain is a message. It is your nervous system, your soul, your story saying something matters here. It's not a signal to retreat. It's a signal to listen, to lean in, to learn. Because pain never shows up without a reason. It doesn't waste its time on people who are meant to stay the same. If you're hurting, it means you're alive. And if you're deeply hurting, it means something in you is trying to grow. But growth doesn't happen in comfort. It never has. Think about a seed breaking through the ground. Think about bones mending after they're broken. Think about a muscle being torn just slightly every time you lift weight, only to rebuild itself stronger. Nature uses pain as a signal of transformation. So why do you think your story would be any different? I remember one of the hardest seasons of my life. I felt emotionally shattered. The world looked gray. I had lost someone I loved, and with them, I lost my direction. There was no roadmap, just silence, just a heaviness in my chest that didn't go away for months. At first, I fought it. I tried to outrun it with distractions. I buried it with work. I smiled when I didn't mean it. But it kept coming back every night, every morning, reminding me of what I didn't want to feel. And one day, I sat still long enough to stop running. I let it hurt. I listened to the pain like it was a teacher instead of a curse. And something strange happened. It began to shape me. It started to show me where I was out of alignment, where I was living from fear, not truth. It showed me where I had abandoned myself to please others. It stripped away the illusion of control, of perfection, of needing everything to look okay. And from that pain came a kind of clarity I'd never known. From that pain came my power. Not overnight, not cleanly, not easily, but deeply, permanently. Because once pain has taught you who you really are, no one can take that away from you. Pain shows you what you care about. Pain teaches you what matters. Pain exposes the cracks in your foundation so you can rebuild with truth instead of illusion. Most people think power comes from being untouched by pain, but the opposite is true. Your greatest power comes from the very places you thought were your weaknesses. Your heartbreak, that's where empathy is born. Your loss, that's where gratitude grows. Your betrayal, that's where boundaries are forged. Your anxiety, that's where awareness sharpens. Your shame, that's where authenticity takes root. Nothing is wasted, not if you face it, not if you allow it to refine you. There's a moment in every person's life when they must choose, do I let this pain harden me, or do I let it break me open? One leads to bitterness. The other leads to breakthrough. And don't confuse openness with weakness. To face pain without numbing it takes more strength than pretending everything's fine. To feel deeply and still keep showing up, that's power. To cry and then rise, that's courage. Pain has a way of burning away the false stories you've been telling yourself. It doesn't just hurt, it reveals. It shows you what you've been tolerating, what you've been avoiding, what you've been pretending doesn't bother you. It doesn't lie. It doesn't flatter you. It doesn't care about your comfort zone. But it does care about your growth. Pain is the threshold where your old self ends and your new self begins. It's the doorway no one wants to walk through, and the only one that leads to true strength. You see, we often say we want to grow. We say we want to change. We say we want to become more. But what we really mean is, I want to grow without being uncomfortable. That's not how transformation works. Growth requires loss, not always in the form of people or possessions, but in the form of identity. You have to let go of who you were in order to become who you're meant to be. And that process, it hurts. Because part of you will fight to stay the same. Part of you will resist the shedding of old skin. That's where emotional pain enters, not as a sign you're broken, but as a sign you're evolving. What if you stopped viewing your pain as a punishment and started seeing it as a portal? Because that's what it is. There is wisdom inside your wounds. There is fire inside your frustration. There is insight in your isolation. There is resurrection in your rock bottom, but only if you stop running. Only if you sit down with your pain like it's your teacher instead of your tormentor. Only if you ask it, what are you here to show me? And only if you have the courage to listen to the answer. Here's what I know: the people who become the strongest, the wisest, the most impactful are not the ones who avoided pain. They are the ones who used it. They turned their heartbreak into healing. They turned their darkness into depth. They turned their grief into greatness. And you can too. That doesn't mean you have to like it. That doesn't mean you don't cry, scream, shake, or fall apart. It means you don't waste it. You don't let it pass without extracting its lesson. Because if you're going to hurt, and you will, then let it count for something. Let it refine you. Let it sharpen you. Let it deepen your compassion, clarify your mission, and ignite your soul. Don't numb it. Don't run from it. Don't bury it. Face it, feel it, rise from it. Because emotional pain is the fire that burns away what's false. And what remains? That raw, resilient, rebuilt version of you. That's where your power lies. So the next time you feel broken, the next time life knocks the wind out of you and brings you to your knees, remember this: you are not being punished. You are being prepared for a deeper strength, a higher calling, a more powerful version of yourself. You don't become powerful despite your pain. You become powerful through it. That is the hidden truth. That is the sacred path. That is how you win the battle in your mind, not by avoiding pain, but by using it one breakthrough at a time. One tear at a time, one step forward, even with a heavy heart. Because if you're walking through pain, you're not weak, you're becoming. And you are closer than you think. Fear is one of the oldest, most primal forces in the human experience. It's wired into the deepest parts of your brain. It's the reason your ancestors survived long enough to pass their DNA to you. Fear kept them alert. Fear kept them cautious. Fear kept them alive. So let's be clear from the beginning. Fear is not your enemy. It's not evil. It's not a weakness. It's not something to be ashamed of. In fact, fear has a job, a very important one. Its job is to protect you, to warn you of danger, to keep you alive. But you have a job too. And your job is not to obey fear. Your job is to lead it. Fear is like an overprotective bodyguard. It means well. But if you let it drive, it'll take you nowhere. Or worse, it'll take you in circles away from growth, away from truth, away from purpose. Because here's what fear doesn't understand: that pain is necessary, risk is essential, and growth is always on the other side of uncertainty. Fear doesn't care about your goals. It doesn't care about your potential. It only cares about keeping you safe. But safe and alive are not the same thing. Safe is not where your future lies. Safe is not where your purpose grows. There will come a moment, maybe today, maybe tomorrow, when fear will speak up again. It will whisper in your ear like it always does. Don't do it. Don't say it. Don't try. Don't change. And you'll feel your chest tighten, your palms sweat, your heart race. That's fear doing its job. It's telling you something is unknown, unpredictable, risky. But it's also telling you you're getting close to something important. See, fear doesn't show up for ordinary things. Fear shows up when something matters. You don't feel fear when you're stagnant. You feel fear when you're stepping into something that stretches you. That's when your brain sounds the alarm, because it confuses discomfort with danger. But there's a difference. Discomfort grows you. Danger destroys you. Most of the fear we face in our modern lives isn't about actual survival. It's psychological fear, the fear of rejection, the fear of failure, the fear of not being enough, the fear of looking foolish. And while those things feel like death to the ego, they're not real threats to your life. They're thresholds to your next level, and your job is to walk through them anyway. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting in spite of it. It's acknowledging, yes, I'm afraid, but I choose to move. That choice, that ability to lead yourself through fear, is what separates growth from stagnation. And here's something the neuroscience tells us: your brain literally changes when you move through fear. Every time you take action despite being afraid, your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for decision-making and logic, gains control over your amygdala, which triggers fear. So with every step of courage, you're training your brain to be braver. You're rewiring your identity. That's not motivational fluff. That's biology. That's fact. But here's the twist. Fear doesn't go away. It evolves with you. Every new level will have its own fear. When you're starting out, it's, what if I'm not good enough? When you succeed, it becomes, what if I lose it all? When you lead, it becomes, what if I fail people? The volume changes. The words change. But fear never truly leaves. That's why waiting for fear to disappear before you move is a trap. You don't outgrow fear. You outgrow the illusion that it controls you. You make peace with its presence. You nod to it like an old friend. You say, thanks for showing up. I hear you. But I've got work to do. Because you do have work to do. You've got gifts to bring into the world, ideas to express, people to impact, a life to live fully and honestly and boldly. And fear's job is not to approve that. Fear's job is to test your conviction. Think of fear as the gatekeeper between who you are and who you're becoming. It stands at every threshold with its arms crossed, daring you to try. Not because it wants to stop you, but because it wants to see if you mean it. If you can't walk past fear, you're not ready for what's on the other side. If you can, then step by step, you claim more of yourself, more of your truth, more of your voice, more of your strength. Let's talk about failure, because that's where fear lives most often. We're all afraid to fail. It's wired in. In school, we're punished for it. On social media, we're mocked for it. In life, we're told it means we're not good enough. But what if failure is just a feedback mechanism? What if failure isn't the opposite of success, but the path to it? No one masters anything without failing. No one leads without stumbling. No one becomes strong without being weak first. If you want to do anything meaningful in your life, you will fail. And fear will be there to say, see, told you so. But here's the trick. Don't take advice from fear. Listen to it, sure, but don't follow it. Treat it like an anxious passenger on your journey. Buckle it in. Let it scream, but don't let it touch the steering wheel. Your job is to drive anyway. Let me tell you something personal. There was a moment in my life, not that long ago, when I was given an opportunity that terrified me, public speaking. I had studied neuroscience for years, but this was different. It meant stepping out from behind the data and sharing my story, my insecurities, my voice. Fear screamed at me, don't do it. You'll embarrass yourself. You're not good enough. I felt it in my body like a tidal wave. But I also knew this fear meant I was stepping into something real, something necessary. So I said yes. My hands were shaking, my voice cracked, but I did it anyway. And you know what I found? The moment I stepped into fear, it shrank. The moment I acted, clarity returned. And the confidence I had been waiting for. It didn't come before the action. It came after. That's how it works. Fear doesn't leave until you prove to yourself that you can walk through it. Not once, repeatedly, relentlessly. So here's your call to action. Whatever fear is whispering to you right now about your dreams, your healing, your next step. Don't wait for it to go away. Don't wait until the anxiety vanishes or the doubt dissolves. Instead, move. Take the first step. Speak the truth. Start the project. End the toxic habit. Raise your standards. And when fear shows up again tomorrow, greet it with calm strength. Tell it, I know you're just trying to protect me, but I've got a life to build. I've got people to love. I've got a purpose to fulfill. And you don't get to decide what I do with this one precious life, because fear may have a job, but so do you. And your job is to rise. There's something deeply overwhelming about trying to change your life all at once. Maybe you've felt it. You look at the mountain of things you want to improve, your body, your finances, your mindset, your habits, your relationships, and it all crashes down on you like a wave. It's too much, too big, too far. And so what do? You freeze, you hesitate, you convince yourself you're not ready, you fall back into old patterns. That's what happens when we stare too long at the whole staircase instead of focusing on just the next step. Because the truth is this, you don't climb a mountain by jumping to the top. You do it one focused, deliberate step at a time. One win at a time, one win, no matter how small, is powerful. Because a win is proof. It's momentum. It's movement. It tells your nervous system, we're doing this. We're no longer stuck. We're capable. But when you're addicted to perfection or obsessed with doing everything at once, you sabotage yourself before you even begin. And that's not failure. That's unrealistic pressure. That's the part of your mind that wants to leap forward without honoring the process. But transformation doesn't work that way. Not real, lasting transformation. Your brain, your body, your identity, they change through consistency, not intensity. They adapt to what you repeat, not what you fantasize about. And repetition starts with one win. Then another, I remember working with someone who had hit rock bottom. His health was gone. His business had collapsed. His marriage was falling apart. And when he looked at the full picture of what needed fixing, he broke down. He said, "I don't know where to start. Everything's a mess." And I told him, "We're not going to fix everything. We're going to focus on one win, just one." So we did. We started with making his bed every morning. That's it. Not because it was a magic ritual, but because it gave him one place to reclaim control. One simple action that whispered, "I still have power." Then it became a short walk, then drinking more water, then organizing his workspace, then making one call per day. And day by day, his life began to shift, not because he tackled everything, but because he focused on one winnable fight at a time. That's how you rise. Not with giant leaps, with small, intentional victories that stack on top of each other until you look up and realize you've become someone new. But the ego doesn't like small wins. The ego wants overnight success. The ego wants dramatic change. The ego says, if it's not all now, it's not worth it. But you've got to silence that voice. You've got to play a longer game, because real power, lasting confidence, doesn't come from doing everything. It comes from finishing something. It comes from following through. You see, every time you set a goal and don't finish it, every time you say you'll change but don't follow through, every time you chase 100 things and complete none, you send a message to your nervous system, "I don't trust myself." But when you pick one thing, focus on it, and finish it, you rebuild that trust. You earn belief. And the best part, it doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be waking up on time for 7 straight days. It can be working out for 10 minutes a day. It can be replacing soda with water. It can be writing 200 words every night. Small hinges swing big doors. And you know what happens after that first win? You feel pride. You feel momentum. You start thinking, maybe I can change. And that thought, that spark, is the ignition for everything else. It's not the size of the win that matters. It's the pattern you build with it. Because success is a pattern, and patterns become personality, and personality becomes identity, and identity dictates behavior. It all starts with one choice. And here's the neuroscience behind it. When you focus on a single task and complete it, your brain releases dopamine, the reward chemical. But not just at the end. It releases dopamine every time you make progress toward the goal. That's why even tiny wins matter. They literally rewire your brain to seek more progress. But if you're scattered, if you're chasing too many goals, your dopamine system gets overwhelmed. You don't get the full reward of completion. You stay stuck in a cycle of starting and stopping. That's how burnout happens, not from effort, but from misdirected energy. So if you're tired of feeling like nothing ever changes, if you're exhausted by your own inconsistency, stop trying to change your whole life in a week. Instead, ask yourself one question. What's one win I can focus on this week? Not 10. Just one. And here's the rule: make it clear. Make it specific and make it winnable. Don't say, "I'll be more productive." Say, "I'll turn off my phone from 8 to 10 a.m. every day and focus on deep work." Don't say, "I'll get in shape." Say, "I'll do 30 push-ups every day for the next 7 days." And then do it. Don't negotiate. Don't overthink. Don't let perfection steal your progress, because your brain is watching. Your nervous system is watching. And with every win, you are building the evidence that says, "I am someone who follows through." That's where belief comes from. Not hype, not motivation, but evidence. When you look in the mirror and see someone who keeps promises, especially the private ones, you start to respect yourself. And when you respect yourself, you raise your standards. And when you raise your standards, your life begins to reflect it. But it all starts with one win. Let me ask you this: what would your life look like a year from now if you focused on one win per week? Just one. 52 intentional changes. 52 micro breakthroughs. You'd be unrecognizable. Not because you did everything, but because you did one thing at a time, with focus, with fire, with consistency. And if you mess up, so what? Get back to the win. If you get distracted, so what? Reset the focus. This isn't about being perfect. It's about being relentless. Because focus is a skill and consistency is a weapon. And you don't need a miracle. You need a method. So here it is. Step 1, choose your win. Step 20A, make it specific and doable. Step 30, focus on nothing else. Step 4, finish. Step 5, repeat. This is how empires are built. This is how battles are won, one victory at a time. And every time you win, no matter how small, remind yourself, I'm building something. I'm not who I was. I'm someone who finishes. I'm someone who follows through. That's how the battle in your mind is won, not in dramatic moments, but in daily decisions. One win at a time. One focused step at a time. until the person you once dreamed of becoming is the person you wake up as. And it all begins right now. What's your one win today? There will be moments, sometimes long seasons, when you look at your life and wonder, what happened to me? You feel scattered, weighed down, tired not just in your body, but in your spirit. Your confidence feels fractured. You second guess every decision. And if you're honest, deep down, there's a voice that whispers, maybe I'm broken. Maybe there's something wrong with me, but that voice is lying. Let me say something that might shift everything for you. You are not broken. You are becoming. You are becoming. And becoming is messy. Becoming is brutal. Becoming doesn't look like a straight line. It looks like doubt and failure and relapse and struggle. It looks like late nights full of questions and early mornings full of resistance. It looks like being lost in a fog with no map, yet walking anyway. You're not supposed to have it all figured out. You're not supposed to be perfect. You're not supposed to heal in a straight line. The caterpillar doesn't look like the butterfly. The seed doesn't resemble the oak tree. And the version of you now is not broken. It's unfinished. There's a difference. There's a lie culture loves to sell you, that only the polished, filtered, and flawless versions of people deserve to be seen, respected, and celebrated. But real growth, the kind that transforms your life from the inside out, doesn't come from looking perfect. It comes from walking through the fire of uncertainty and choosing not to give up on yourself. You are not a problem to be solved. You are a process unfolding. You don't need to be fixed. You need to be understood. And more importantly, you need to understand yourself, especially the parts of you that feel messy, insecure, fearful, impulsive, or out of control. Because those parts, they're not signs of failure. They're signals. They're pointing to where the healing needs to happen. They're messengers from your nervous system, from your past, from your pain. And pain, when held gently and looked at honestly, becomes wisdom. Here's the truth: you've survived things that should have broken you. You've carried weight no one else saw. You've shown up on days when it felt like the darkness would never lift. You've made it here, despite the fear, despite the chaos, despite the past. That doesn't sound broken to me. That sounds resilient. That sounds becoming. The problem is, we're taught to measure our worth by our productivity, our image, our comparison to others. And so when we're in a season of transition or transformation, and we don't have external proof of success, we assume we're falling apart. But in reality, some of your most powerful growth is invisible. It's happening beneath the surface. It's the battles you fight in silence, the boundaries you enforce without applause, the beliefs you dismantle in the dark, the self-awareness you earn through pain. And that kind of growth, it's sacred, it's slow, and it's real. Think about nature. Think about how a forest regenerates after a fire. At first, all you see is devastation, ash, ruin, loss. It looks destroyed. But underneath that soil, something is stirring. Roots are reconnecting. Seeds are opening. New life is preparing to rise, stronger, wiser, more vibrant than before. You can't see it yet, but it's coming. And you are that forest. Your burnouts, your breakdowns, your seasons of collapse, they are not the end. They are the clearing. They are the space being made for the next version of you to grow. So don't label yourself broken just because you're in a rebuilding season. Don't shame yourself for not being there yet. You're in the middle, not the end. And the middle is where all the magic happens. This is where you learn who you really are, when everything is stripped away. This is where you develop grit. This is where you discover your boundaries, your voice, your values. Not because it's easy, but because you were forced to go deeper. And maybe you need to hear this today. Just because it's hard doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. Sometimes the pain is proof that you're doing something new, that you're rewiring old patterns, that you're walking away from things that once defined you. Of course, it hurts. Growth always costs something. But the cost of staying the same is far higher. I know what it feels like to carry shame around like it's part of your skin, to look at your past and only see the mistakes, the failures, the versions of yourself you wish you could erase. But let me tell you something: life changing the parts of you that feel the most unworthy. Those are often the exact places where your purpose will be born. Your mess becomes your medicine. Your scars become your strength. Your wounds become the doorway through which you find compassion, empathy, and depth. You cannot serve the world from perfection. You serve it from authenticity. And you become authentic not by pretending to be okay, but by owning the fact that you're in process and still choosing to show up. Every time you get up after falling down, you teach your nervous system that you are safe, You are strong and you can be trusted to keep moving. That's the foundation of transformation, self-trust, not perfection, not endless motivation, but a quiet, fierce commitment to becoming the kind of person who doesn't abandon themselves when it gets hard. You may not be where you want to be, but you're closer than you were. You may not feel whole, but wholeness isn't a destination. It's a relationship with yourself. And maybe what you need right now isn't another goal, another to-do list, another harsh standard. Maybe what you need is grace. Maybe what you need is to sit in the middle of the storm and say, I'm still becoming, and that's okay. That statement alone can rewire your mind because it shifts your focus from shame to strategy, from self-punishment to self-partnership. You're not broken. You're in the lab of life, experimenting, failing, trying again. You're shedding old skin, old stories, old patterns. You are becoming fiercely, slowly, beautifully. And the world doesn't need you to be perfect. It needs you to be real. It needs you to rise from your own ashes and show others it can be done. You are not behind. You are not too late. You are not unworthy. You are not defined by your lowest moment. You are becoming. So keep going. Keep trusting the process. Keep choosing growth over comfort. Keep reminding yourself that you are allowed to be a work in progress and still be powerful. Because every time you choose to believe in your own unfolding, even when it's messy, you reclaim your power. And that is how you win the battle in your mind, not by arriving, but by becoming. Over and over again, with courage, with patience, with love. Approval is seductive. It feels like safety. It feels like being seen, accepted, validated, even loved. From the time we were kids, we've been conditioned to seek it, to please our parents, impress our teachers, blend in with peers, and eventually perform for a world that rewards conformity over authenticity. But somewhere along the way, many of us began to build our identities around external approval instead of internal alignment. And that's a dangerous game, because when you live for approval, you become a prisoner of performance. You start editing your voice, shrinking your truth, abandoning your values, all to chase applause that feels good for a moment, but leaves you empty the second it fades. But what if you stop chasing approval? What if instead of surrounding yourself with people who fuel your ego, you surrounded yourself with people and practices that fuel your inner fire? Let's be honest. Approval feels good because it temporarily eases the ache of insecurity, but it doesn't last. It never has. That dopamine hit of likes, compliments, praise. It's short-lived. You always need more. You always fear losing it. You never feel settled. But inner fire, that's something else entirely. Inner fire doesn't come from what others think of you. It comes from the core of who you are, from your values, your truth, your growth, your courage. It's the energy that comes from living in alignment with your purpose, not someone else's expectations. There's a moment every person faces when they realize, if I keep living for approval, I'll never fully live for myself. And that's when the shift begins. You start choosing differently. You start saying no to what drains you. You stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. You stop performing. You start becoming. But it doesn't happen easily. Because letting go of approval means letting go of the version of you who survived on it. It means disappointing people, losing people, being misunderstood. And that's scary until you realize what you're gaining in return: peace, clarity, power, freedom. See, when you stop chasing approval, you start choosing alignment. And alignment is what fuels your fire. When your words match your beliefs, when your actions reflect your values, when your life is led by purpose, not pressure. That's when the fire inside you starts to grow. And that fire changes everything. It changes how you speak, how you show up, how you walk into rooms, how you carry yourself, not with arrogance, but with presence, with certainty, with rootedness. Because when you're powered by your own fire, you don't need the world to clap for you. You become your own applause. But this doesn't mean you don't value connection. It doesn't mean you isolate. It means you become selective with your energy. You stop seeking approval from people who haven't done the inner work themselves. You stop watering yourself down to fit into spaces you've outgrown. You surround yourself not with comfort, but with conviction. You look for people who challenge you, who reflect your potential, who remind you of your worth when you forget. Not people who reward your performance, but ignore your pain. You seek those who say, I see who you're becoming, and I won't let you settle. Those people are rare. But when you find them, keep them close, because your environment is either feeding your fire or suffocating it. This is why inner fire matters. Approval can be taken from you. Circumstances can change. People can leave. But your inner fire, That's yours to build, yours to protect, and yours to reignite as many times as you need. There was a time in my life when I built everything, my career, my identity, my self-worth, on external recognition. I was good at getting praise. I knew how to impress. But the truth is, I was exhausted. I was empty. Because nothing I did felt real. It felt like acting. And one day I realized I didn't even know what I truly wanted anymore. I only knew what got approval. That's when I had to burn it all down. Not literally, but internally. I had to strip away every goal, habit, and belief that wasn't mine. And from that clearing, I started over. I asked myself, what do I value? What lights me up when no one is watching? What truth am I avoiding to keep people comfortable? What would I pursue if I didn't need anyone's applause? The answers didn't come quickly. But when they did, they changed me. Because for the first time, I wasn't just performing, I was becoming. That's when I began to build my life around inner fire, around daily rituals that reconnected me to my center, around people who challenged my growth instead of validating my stagnation, around goals that scared me but felt real. And from that fire came a new kind of confidence, not loud, not performative, quiet, rooted, unshakable, the kind of confidence that says, I may not be for everyone, and that's okay. I'm for me, and that's enough. And that's what I want for you. Because here's what I know: approval is cheap. It's fast. It's shallow. Fire is earned. It's built. It's sacred. Approval can make you liked. Fire can make you free. So if you're tired of chasing applause, of curating your life for likes, of bending who you are just to feel safe, let this be the moment you choose a different path. Choose the path of alignment. Choose the people who fuel your growth. Choose the habits that reconnect you to yourself. Choose the silence that helps you hear your inner voice again. Because when you have inner fire, you stop asking the world for permission. You become your own source, your own strength, your own home. You walk into every room not wondering, will they like me? But knowing, I know who I am. And that identity, the one rooted in fire, not approval, is the version of you that's unstoppable. So light your fire, stoke it with truth, feed it with courage, protect it with boundaries, and let it guide every step forward. Because when your life is fueled from within, no external storm can blow you off course. You don't need their approval. You need your fire. Now go burn. If someone followed you around every day and whispered in your ear, you're not good enough, you always mess things up, you'll never be successful. Eventually, you'd believe it. Even if you started out confident, their voice would begin to erode your strength. That voice would become a prison, a weight dragging you back down every time you tried to rise. But here's the painful truth: that voice already exists, and it's yours. Your self-talk is the single most consistent voice you hear. It's there when you wake up. It's there when you look in the mirror. It's there when you succeed, and even louder when you fail. And the tone of that voice is not just background noise, it's the script your mind and body use to decide what's possible for you. Most people treat self-talk like a passive experience, something that just happens, but it's not. Self-talk is a daily weapon, a tool, a choice, one you either use against yourself or use to elevate yourself. You want to win the battle in your mind. Start with the voice you speak to yourself with, because nothing will sabotage your potential faster than chronic, unconscious, negative self-talk. And nothing will unlock your power more reliably than learning to talk to yourself like someone you deeply respect. Let's break it down. Every time you think a thought, your brain fires specific neurons. When repeated, these neurons form pathways. Those pathways become the dominant routes for future thoughts. That's how beliefs are formed, not through evidence, but through repetition. So if you keep telling yourself, I'm not disciplined, I always quit, I'm too old, I'm not smart enough, guess what? That becomes your internal programming, your identity, and your brain stops looking for any evidence to the contrary. But when you start to rewire that voice even subtly, I'm learning discipline, I didn't finish before, but I can try again, I'm not too late, I'm capable. You begin creating a new track, a new frequency, a new identity. That's why self-talk is not motivational fluff. It's neurological training. It's how you teach your brain what's safe, what's possible, and what to expect from you. And here's what most people don't realize: your brain is always listening, even when you say things as a joke, even when you say them sarcastically, even when you don't mean it. It takes your words seriously. It interprets them as instruction. So when you say, I'm so stupid, your brain doesn't laugh, it adjusts your expectations of yourself. When you say, I'm always anxious, it prepares your nervous system to respond accordingly. When you say, I could never do that, It writes off the opportunity before you even try. Words become your reality, and your internal words become your internal world. So if you want to shift your life, shift your language, especially the language you speak to yourself in silence. And no, it doesn't mean lying to yourself. It means choosing truth that empowers instead of truth that paralyzes. Because here's another truth: you don't have to believe everything you think. You are not your thoughts. You are the observer of your thoughts, and you have the power to replace them. But it takes intentionality. It takes catching yourself mid-thought and asking, is this helpful? Is this true? Is this the way I'd speak to someone I love? Because if you wouldn't talk to your best friend like that, you have no business talking to yourself like that. Let me share something I learned from neuroscience and personal experience. Your subconscious mind doesn't care about what's true. It cares about what's repeated. This is why affirmations, when done right, are powerful, not because they're magic, but because they reprogram your dominant thought patterns. But affirmations aren't just positive quotes. They're training sessions, and they need to be aligned with action. If you say, I'm strong, but you don't back that up with courageous behavior, your mind won't buy it. But if you say, I am becoming strong, I am building strength every time I show up despite fear, now your words match your effort. Now your brain believes you. That's how you build credibility with yourself. And the more credible you are to yourself, the less you need external validation, because you trust your own voice, because your inner dialogue becomes your anchor, not your enemy. Let me ask you something deeply personal. How do you speak to yourself after you make a mistake? Do you beat yourself up? Do you replay the failure over and over? Do you label yourself as stupid, lazy, a fraud? Or do you say, that hurt, but I'm not done. I made a mistake, but I'm still worthy. I'll learn from this. I'll grow. That moment, right there, is where self-talk becomes a weapon, because it can cut you down or it can cut you free. And this isn't just mindset, it's biology. Negative self-talk activates the stress response. It floods your system with cortisol. It keeps your nervous system in a constant state of fight, flight, or freeze. That chronic stress affects your sleep, your digestion, your focus, and even your immune function. But positive, empowered self-talk, it activates the parasympathetic nervous system. It regulates your breathing. It enhances clarity. It reduces reactivity. It gives your body a sense of safety and stability, even in chaos. And when your body feels safe, your mind performs better. You become more creative, more resilient, more you. So how do you start using self-talk as a daily weapon? First, get aware. Start paying attention to your default thoughts, especially in moments of stress. Write them down. Don't judge, just observe. You can't change what you don't notice. Second, challenge the lies. Ask yourself, where did this belief come from? Who taught me this? What's the truth underneath the fear? Often, what you call truth is just an old story, an old wound, or someone else's limitation. Third, rewrite the script. Start speaking to yourself like someone you're responsible for strengthening. That doesn't mean sugar coating. It means guiding, uplifting, empowering. Start saying things like, I'm not perfect, but I'm committed. I may not feel ready, but I'm showing up anyway. I trust myself to figure this out. This is hard, but I'm harder. Repeat those words daily, out loud if you can, especially in front of the mirror, because repetition creates identity. And finally, live it. Self-talk without aligned action is fantasy, but when your words and actions match, you become unstoppable. You become someone who doesn't wait to feel confident. You generate confidence through consistency, and it all begins with the voice inside. Your greatest battles will be fought in your own mind, but your greatest victories will be too. So make your self-talk your weapon. Sharpen it daily. Use it wisely. Speak life into your potential. Remind yourself who you are, even when no one else does. Because at the end of the day, the loudest voice in your life will always be your own. Make sure it's the one that helps you rise. You can sit and think about your problems all day. You can analyze them, dissect them, talk to 100 people about them, journal until the pages bleed, and still, somehow, feel stuck. Why? Because the mind doesn't solve mental war with more thinking. The mind finds relief when the body moves. That's the secret. Most people miss. Action is the antidote to mental war. When your mind is spiraling, when doubt, fear, and overthinking are screaming at full volume, there is one thing that begins to interrupt that chaos movement. Action. Forward motion. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be pretty. It just has to be real. Because mental war thrives in stillness, not the peaceful kind, the paralyzed kind, the kind where you sit with your thoughts long enough that they begin to swallow you, the kind of stillness where you think yourself deeper into confusion, deeper into self-doubt, deeper into paralysis. We all do it. You think, I'll move when I feel ready. I'll start when I'm confident. I'll act when the fear goes away. But the truth is, readiness is created through action, not the other way around. Confidence isn't a prerequisite, it's a result. Let me share a moment you've probably lived through. You wake up with a list of things to do, a vision in your heart, a fire somewhere inside you, but then your mind steps in. It says, what if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? What if this doesn't matter? And suddenly your energy drops. You start scrolling, avoiding, distracting. You tell yourself you're figuring things out, but you're not moving. And the longer you stay there, the heavier it gets. The war inside you grows. This is how mental loops are born. And the only way out isn't more overthinking, it's movement. That's why small action is powerful. Not because it fixes everything, but because it breaks the loop. It interrupts the mental cycle and gives your body something to focus on. And when your body engages, your mind follows. You can't spiral mentally while you're fully present in a task. You can't drown in doubt while you're in the middle of a focused sprint. That's why action feels like relief. It shifts your attention away from your fear and toward your power. Here's what neuroscience tells us. When you act, especially toward a goal, you activate the dopaminergic system in your brain. That system isn't just about reward. It's about motivation. It kicks in when you move, not just when you succeed. So the very act of taking action creates its own momentum. But when you wait, hesitate, or delay, your brain has no reason to release dopamine. It stays in protection mode, amplifying all the risks, all the fears, all the reasons to avoid the unknown. That's not weakness, it's biology. But biology doesn't have to control your life. You get to lead it. And you lead it with decisions, not feelings. This is why the boldest, most disciplined people you admire, they don't always feel ready. They don't always feel motivated. But they've trained themselves to act anyway. They've learned that action is a decision. And they make that decision before the mind can talk them out of it. When I think about the darkest times in my life, the moments when anxiety was high, when uncertainty felt unbearable, when I doubted every part of myself, what saved me wasn't some lightning bolt of inspiration. It wasn't a perfect plan. It was one small action, a walk, a phone call, a cold shower, a to-do list, a breath, and then another and another, each one pulling me out of the fog and back into reality, each one proving to my nervous system, I'm still in control. I'm not powerless. I'm not stuck. That's the power of action. It reminds your body who's in charge. It says to fear, you don't get the final word. It says to doubt, you don't dictate my future. It says to hesitation, you may be loud, but I'm louder. And it says to your future self, I'm coming for you. Think about this. How many times have you waited for clarity that never came because you refused to move? You thought if you sat still long enough, the answer would drop from the sky. But clarity rarely precedes movement. It comes through it. The more you move, the more data you collect. The more you experiment, the more feedback you get. And from that feedback, you adjust. You grow. You win. You don't need a perfect plan. You need motion. Let go of the myth that action means massive overhaul. Some of the most powerful actions are microscopic, saying no when you usually say yes. Sitting down to write one paragraph. Making your bed when depression says, don't bother. Stepping outside for air when anxiety says, hide. Drinking a glass of water instead of scrolling. Sending the email. Starting the reps. Closing the tab. Speaking the truth. These are not minor. They are revolutions in disguise. Because every action you take in defiance of your inner war rewrites the script. It says, I am not the victim of this chaos. I am the author of my comeback. And you don't need to feel brave to act. In fact, some of the most powerful actions you'll ever take will be trembling, shaky, doubt-ridden, but they still count. They count more because you did them despite the war raging in your head. That is real courage. You want peace of mind. You'll never think your way into it, but you can act your way toward it. Peace comes not from silence, but from strength, from knowing whatever happens, I trust myself to move, to show up, to take the next step. And that trust, it's built in the gym of consistent action. You don't need to solve everything today. You don't need to fix your whole life in one burst. You just need to move. Right now, in some way, any way. And then again tomorrow. That's how the war gets quieter. Not with answers, but with action. Because action brings results. Results build belief. Belief fuels momentum. And momentum carries you through the next battle. and the next. Until one day, you look back and realize the war didn't disappear, but I outgrew it. I became bigger than my fear. So if you're in the thick of it right now, if your mind is loud, if doubt is screaming, if you don't know what to do next, don't wait for motivation. Don't wait for clarity. Choose one small action. Do it. Then breathe. Then do the next one. Repeat. Your mind may resist, but your soul will thank you, because your soul was never asking for perfection. It was asking for motion. So remember this: when the war is loud, move louder. When the storm is heavy, step anyway. When the fear says stop, say no and start. Because action is your weapon. Action is your rebellion. Action is your way back to power.